a video on making homemade treacle or golden syrup. Yeah, like syrup that you use in a treacle sponge, that type of thing, or a cinnamon sponge, whichever you want to call it. And normally I use this, which is the juice that's left over from poaching pears. But I was kind of thinking no one's kind of going to have that, and that's just something that I've got. So we're going to make, and I normally just add sugar to it until I think it's about the right kind of consistency, and add some lemon to stop it from crystallizing. But I was kind of thinking I really should do like a proper kind of like workout of how much sugar, opposed to water and lemon type of thing. So that pear syrup's got loads of flavour to it, so we need to kind of like put some flavour into this. So it's kind of a case of what I've got around the house. So we'll make a syrup first to kind of make it infused. You don't have to. It kind of, the idea of this is that you make a syrup and it's going to be cheaper than buying golden syrup, because that's kind of quite expensive. And all you really have to do is just buy some sugar and add a bit of water to it. So we'll use what we've got around the house. So cinnamon stick can go in. I had cocktails, so I've got some oranges. I've used some of the zest off the oranges, but we'll put the juice in. There was a little bit of zest left on them, so the zest is a couple of oranges and a lemon in there. Not entirely that important, so star anise can go in for definite. Cinnamon stick, and then three cloves. That would kind of quite nice. So that kind of replicates the flavour of the pear syrup. It's got a bit of fruit in it, and then we just need to. So the pear syrup would be about a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar to water with the flavourings in. So I need to make syrup. So we'll see how much syrup we're going to make. That's quite a lot of spices. An orange. So we'll use the juice from the oranges. Well, I suppose you could just buy some orange juice, which would be kind of quite interesting. But water would just be fine. Water, lemon, and whatever spices you've got would be fine. So we'll juice these, and we'll see how much liquid it gives us, and then we'll do. Might as well do a fair old amount. So we'll do 500 millilitres of. Or 250 millilitres. I don't know. Yeah, that's quite a lot. Yeah, we'll do 500 millilitres of liquid. And we don't want any of the pips or any of the pulp in the syrup that we're going to make. So we'll do this. So I'll squeeze these, and then we'll come. I'll just end up waffling, and you'll watch me juicing fruits, which is not that interesting, is it? So we'll pause, and we're back when I am ready to do something else. Right. So juice the oranges, juice the lemons, and then topped up that amount of juice to 500 millilitres with some water, and then bring the juice up and the zest and the spices just up to boil. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a 1-to-1 ratio syrup. So that's the same amount of weight of liquid to sugar, and then we're going to leave that infuse. Going to bring it back up to the boil. Melt the sugar, and then we're going to leave that to infuse, and then all the flavours from the cinnamon, the spices, and the zest will go into the syrup. Can't add more sugar at this stage to make it into the golden syrup, treacle, whatever you want to call it, heavy syrup. I don't know what it's called in the rest of the world. It's Tate & Lyle's golden syrup in the UK. Is it Tate & Lyle's? I can't remember. I don't think I've got a jar of it. No, I haven't got a jar. I only make my own. So we can. It's going to be really difficult to strain out those zest and the spices once the syrup gets really kind of quite thick. So we'll make this simple syrup, 1-to-1 ratio with spices. We'll let it cool down overnight, so all the flavours will infuse, and then we'll bring it back up to the boil, strain everything out. So the reboiling of it will extract some more flavour from the spices and the zest, and then we'll add some more sugar to it. I think for like 500 millilitres of liquid, I think we'll probably end up putting about 2 kilos of syrup in, sugar in, and that will make us kind of quite a heavy syrup, or it might even be 5, so it might be 2.5 kilograms worth of sugar. But we'll just kind of have to see. What we'll do is when we're adding the sugar, we'll do like a jelly test when you've got a frozen plate in the freezer, and we'll take out a bit of syrup, we'll put it on the frozen plate, which is kind of cold, and then that will make the syrup cool down a lot quicker, and they'll be able to kind of have a look at the kind of consistency. So we'll kind of do it that way, and then we can have a guess. But it's just me just faffing around. You can see it's going to be a nice colour, and with those spices in there as well, it'll taste nice. In fact, I should probably taste it. See what it tastes like. It'll taste nice. I mean, if you want to make a simple syrup and then use this for cocktails, it'd be delicious. Yeah, it's really nice already. You don't have to use the orange. It's just because I had it in the fridge. Lemon is important, and the spices, but it's what spices you've got. So don't go out and buy cinnamon, because that kind of defeats the object of making a cheap syrup. But if you've got some star anise, if you've got some cinnamon, use some cinnamon. If you've got some star anise, you use some star anise. Some cardamom pods would be nice if you've got those, or some coriander seeds in would be nice. Vanillas are just kind of a little bit too expensive, but if you have the vanilla pod, which you've scraped the seeds out to use something else, the pod will be fine. So any kind of spices that you've got kicking around, anything that you want to use up, would be a good idea. So I'll do like a bare minimum recipe, and then all the things that you can put in if you want. I'll do it in the description so you can quite understand. But anyway, so that's come up to the boil. All the sugar is dissolved, so we'll let that cool down overnight. We'll put a lid on it. We'll let it cool down, and then we'll finish it off tomorrow. Right, so syrup has cooled overnight, so it has been macerating. Sounds about right, doesn't it? And it's just steamed up the camera. And I brought it back up to the boil because it's easier to. It's easier just to add sugar to hot liquids. They melt a lot easier rather than putting the sugar in the pan. The sugar wants to go down to the bottom of the pan, and then it takes a lot longer for things to heat up. So brought it back up to the boil. We'll strain out all the spices and the zest. The zest is cooked now, and it's lovely. I've had a taste of the syrup, and it's absolutely delicious. There's some 800 millilitres. So I need something to put that in without it spilling it everywhere. I can use that. It's going to get washed anyway. So that can go over there. Syrup back into the pan. So that's roughly a 1 part sugar, 1 part water syrup, which is 1:1, and it's got some spices in, and it's got some lemon and some zest and juice and of orange and lemon. Okay, and so I reckon 1 part water to 4 parts sugar. So we need to put in another 1.5 kilos of sugar. And then I think that will be a good amount of sugar, and we'll make a syrup, a really heavy kind of thick syrup that we can use as golden syrup type treacle type thing. So we'll kind of see. The acid in the citrus fruits will keep it from. I'll tell you what we will do. I'll just have another 100. I'll add 500 grams. 500 grams, and then kind of. So that was 500 grams. We'll add another 500 grams, and then we'll keep 500 grams back. So I don't want to put too much sugar in. Another 500 grams. So these can go in. And I was thinking today, while I was out, yeah, so I've used orange juice in it. You don't have to, you can make it cheap, and just use the water, lemon, sugar, and whatever spices you've got to kind of keep the costs down. But I was also kind of thinking you could use any kind of fruit juice that you wanted. So you could use, if you wanted to use up some fruit juices, or you wanted to put in some cordial, so like you could put in, like any cordial that you've got, any fruit juices that you've got, so like cherry juice, cranberry juice, mixed fruit juices, like a tropical one, anything that you kind of want to use up is going to work. You don't have to, but it's one of those things. And whatever you put in, it's going to affect your flavour. So the more kind of flavours you put in, the more interesting it's going to be. But you don't have to. You can make it as cheap as possible. So we'll let that come up to the boil, and then it'll melt the sugar, and then we'll have a look at it. But I'll pause because you don't want to see this boiling, and I'll just have to waffle about things which probably aren't very interesting. Right, it's boiled. It's combined. Looks quite thick. So I've had a plate in the freezer. So it's a bit of a jam technique, is this? And what you do is you take some of the syrup and you pour it onto the cold plate, and it instantly cools the syrup, and then you can see what kind of consistency it is when it's cold. So you do it in jam to test the how thick the jam is, but it works for all things as well. So it works for stocks, and it works for syrups and all kinds of things. So you can see what kind of consistency it's going to be. I don't want to eat that. I do want to put that in my mouth, but it's hot, so I won't. So now, so that's cold. I think it wants to be thicker than that. I don't know. I haven't got any syrup to kind of compare it to. It tastes delicious. So that's in a cold plate. That's probably I want to put another 500 grams in. So we'll get a high yield if we put more sugar in, and then we'll kind of see how it is. So, like most things, I wing my way through it. So that goes back in the freezer. And then we will put another 500 grams worth of sugar in. So we've done the originally what I thought, which was 1 part water to 4 parts sugar. So if you don't put the lemon in, it crystallises back to sugar, which is kind of quite interesting. And once I did it, and what happened was it formed like these really big sugar crystals, which look like diamonds. Well, they're not, obviously not like see-through as a diamond, but it was kind of quite impressive. And I think maybe we'll have a go at that someday. We'll see if we can replicate that, because it made a really interesting syrup for the sponge, and these crystals kind of sat on the outside of the sponge, and was delicious, absolutely delicious. So that's something we can have a look at maybe when we've got a bit more time and we're not faffing around with other things. So back up to the boil. We'll melt the sugar. We might need to add a little bit of lemon, but what we will add, I don't want to break into half a lemon, so we'll just add, this will be fine, this easy lemon, the stuff that you buy when you can't be bothered to juice lemons and things. It's basically, is it lemon juice or is it just citric acid? The cheaper ones just tend to be a little bit of lemons from concentrate, and then potassium something or other, probably just to keep it from fermenting. Yeah, so it's lemon juice from concentrate. The cheaper ones tend to be lemon flavouring and citric acid, and certainly the ones back 30-40 years ago, that's what they will have been as well. They won't have been lemon juice, they'll have just been citric acid with a bit of lemon flavouring, back in the good old days when all kinds of E numbers and flavourings were used. Although people get the impression that e-numbers are a bad thing. But what e-numbers are, everything's got an e-number in cooking. So any kind of, even if it's a natural, completely 100% organic, natural flavouring or preservative, it will have an e-number, you know. So the idea that e-numbers were a bad thing, not strictly true. So we'll just put an extra lemon juice in there, and that will stop the recrystallization of the sugar, and it will keep it a syrup. I'm waffling, you see. I should have paused the video. I'll pause the video. Right, that's come up to the boil, and I can't feel any, well, there's a little bit of crystals on the bottom, but it'll be fine. So, plates out freezer, same again. Don't want any of that froth on the top. That's just the air bubbles that have been trapped by the sugar as that froth on the top. It's not impurities or anything like that, although there will be a little bit of impurities. So that's that. That to wash. And how's that? Yeah, that's better. You won't really know until it's properly cooled tomorrow. But I think that's, yeah, that feels about right. That feels about right. Yeah. So we won't really know until tomorrow when it's completely cool. It'll take a long time to cool down. So we'll have a look at it tomorrow. But what I am going to do is I'm just going to let it cool slightly, and then I've got to make a syrup sponge. So I'll show you a really good technique for making a syrup sponge. I've done it with a jam before. You won't watch the video. No one watches my videos. I will, but someday someone might. But I'll show you what to do when you make a jam sponge and you want to portion the jam sponge beforehand, but you still kind of don't want it to fall to bits as you portion it. You kind of like bake the cake and then put the jam, take the cake out of the container and then put the jam in the bottom of the container and put the cake back on top of it that's been pre-portioned, and then you turn it upside down. It's very effective. You can do the same with syrup sponge. So I'll show you how to do that, but I'm just going to let it cool first. I'm going to have something to eat because I'm starving. Right, so bake your sponge. Take it out of the paper, scrape off all the extra bits of cake from the paper, then take your syrup and pour into the bottom of the cake pan. Oh, I never measured how much syrup there is. It'll get, oh, I guess it'll be fine. About that much syrup. No, you can put as much as you want. So that much syrup, slush it around. You pre-sliced your cake, and then you put the cake on the top, and the syrup soaks into the bottom of the cake. And then when you turn the cake out, you turn it out so that becomes the bottom, and the syrup is on the top, and it's delicious. It's just an easy way of doing a syrup sponge if you're wanting to pre-portion things. It's a bit of a chefy trick, but it works every time. And then you know that you've got however many portions in that, because if you try and cut hot cake, it just wants to go to mush. Certainly when it's got some sponge in it or some jam in it, it just wants to kind of fall to bits. So if you do it that way, then you turn it out, you've got individual portions. But there you go, and then you can pour your custard on. Delicious. So, that out of the way, I've got another one to do, and then I'm going to pour the rest of the syrup into jars. So I reckon there's about, I'll end up doing about 2/3 of one of those jars in syrup into these treacle sponges. And then so I'll have an idea of how much. Yeah, it looks about the right consistency. About that much. And then we'll have an idea of, try not to make a mess with the syrup. Then we'll have an idea of what kind of cost that is. But we'll end up making about a big jar's worth of treacle. And I normally use like a big jar of treacle per like 2 cakes, so like 30 portions. But we'll be making a lot more than that, so we'll see. They're normally about £3 a tin. Even if you get it on special offer, it's kind of quite expensive. But doing it this way, certainly a lot cheaper. And I'm sorry, Tate and Lyle, but my treacle's a lot nicer than yours. Well, it's not treacle. My golden syrup's a lot nicer than yours. So that out there, and then into jars. Let's see how much we've got. So we'll end up probably making about 2 jars worth. Yeah, about 2 jars. So just to get out there, we'll melt that in the bottom of the pan. Put the heat on that just to melt that just a little bit easier because it's cooled slightly, and then we'll pour it into a jar. But you don't need to see that, and then we'll have a look at this in the morning. Right, let's have a taste. There we go. Looks nice and thick. There we go. That's golden syrup consistency, isn't it? Look at that. Probably a little bit thicker. Probably a little bit thicker. Could have done with a little less sugar in, but I think that's fine. And it's not crystallizing, so that's okay. Let's knock most of that off, and then we'll give it a try. So I reckoned, what have I made? I've made about 1.8 kilos, I reckon, in weight, something like that. And to buy that much in a golden syrup from anywhere, it's probably going to look about £5. And I reckon I've made that same amount for £1.50, £1.60, something like that. I reckon it's about £1.20 for 2 kilos of sugar, and it's about, if you look around, you can get a lemon for about 20p, so maybe 40p, and then the spices have got around maybe like 10p for the spices. So I've made it for about a third of the price, and it tastes nicer. So you can make your own, and you can make it nicer, and you can make it cheaper. Yeah, I'll put the rest in the description. But it's delicious, and cheaper than buying, you know. And it's one of those things, you've kind of got sugar in the house, whereas you can use sugar for lots of different things. You can only use golden syrup for 1 or 2 things, so it kind of makes sense to buy the sugar and make your own, because the sugar is a lot more not diversified. It's that word, isn't it? It's I can't even think of the word. Diverse. Yeah, well, okay. So the sugar's a lot more diverse in what you can use it for. So, but there you go. Homemade treacle. It's a winner.